Nigeria, among other nations, can be regarded as a dangerous or one of the most dangerous places to practice journalism. We'll go beyond our physical freedom, whether we're going to get shot while doing our jobs, that is there. But largely, our freedom has been infringed on by the economy in different ways. Yes, while we were under the military, it was a little bit or a lot more difficult than it is now to practice. We all had to do something extra to stay safe. Plan your pages, do your news conferences in addresses that are not known to the media houses, trying to dodge the bullets and the security forces. Since we returned to this era of democratic rule, we are allowed to do a lot more than we used to. We're able to do to practice journalism in a lot easier environment. But the danger is there, and the danger is more economic, like I said. The media industry has continued to shrink. And as of today, I'll say Armageddon is finally here. So we are not in a good place as far as press freedom is. We can say, oh, we're free because we can go to work, because nobody is sitting on your office and saying, you have security people there shutting down of Guardian and Punch in those days like it used to be. It's not as rampant now. It's not that there is no more clamp down. It is there. But the danger largely now is the economic freedom that has gone down from like 90% to 20%. So that freedom is the one that I find more dangerous.
Very insightful. Okay, Comrade Dapo, can you take it from where she spoke? Comrade, I think your mic is mute.
Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
It's mute again.
It's mute again?
Okay, you're back now. Okay. It's on now.
Yeah. I think typically we try to understand freedom in the context of politics, but it's a little broader. The way I will put it though is that political freedom for the media is still a very problematic issue in the country. And I think the ratings that Lola, that you have just read out, speaks very clearly to where we are. And to say that we still have political challenges is to speak pointedly with respect to the legal frameworks that exist that constrain the ability of the media to function properly. There are about 18 laws today in the books that effectively constrain ability to practice. But beyond that, beyond the exercise of inert laws is indeed the active political engagement and excesses of political actors in the state sector. And I think this is best expressed in the way that security forces mostly have been used to harass journalists and to affect the way we do our work. There's a platform that tracks this situation, which is called the Press Attack which gives historical data from 1985 of how the media in Nigeria has been under attack, so to say. And the report cards are really, really very troubling, I have to say, because this is very clear to most of us. I don't want to dwell too much on that. I just like to speak very briefly on two areas, and I think this is the point that Mrs. Egwemade has spoken about, which is what she characterizes now as the economic. And then I'll link that to what might we call the technological basis of that economic challenge. With the effective transition to digital in our practice, the whole models that support the economy of the media has radically changed. And well, unfortunately, not all managers are quick to get on board of the digital transition. So, and that has really caused a whole lot of problems. So prior to the COVID era, so to say, it was already clear to Nigerian media that this is really going to be a very troubling year. The whole of last year, the whole telltale signs were here. And with the coming of COVID, as it were, the report cards are coming so very quickly, and you can see the signs of layoff, the signs of pay cuts, and things like that that's been announced. I'm sure we can come back to give a clearer illustration to the points that were said. But I think it's fair to say that politically, legally, economically, and the technological basis around which the media work today in Nigeria continue to be extremely constraining. Really, what we may say that we've come to a very existential point in the existence of our profession and practice.
Thank you so much, Comrade, for that background. Some people just joined us, so if you're just joining us, please, you can drop your comments and feedback. We'll take them on the go in the chat box, just at the left corner of the screen. Yes, so I'll hand over to Mojid now. Mr. Mojid, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so I'll hand over to you now. Yeah.
Yeah, going forward, as outlined by Lola earlier, we have to go now to Mr. Adebawo and Mrs. Ene. We look at it, anyway. Let me go this way. We to make it gender balancing. You started with a woman before, so let's start with a man this time. It's not a competition really though, but it's also very important. Yeah, Uncle Shola, I hope you are here. You can hear me clearly. Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh yes, I hear you clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, like we have always raised, you have seen that at this period of time, there is something called misinformation, poor information management, the crisis, the economic crisis, for coming from the side of, as a PR expert, how much do you think the economic crisis rocking the media industry has affected relationship between the PR and the journalist?
Thank you very much, and my regards to the distinguished panelists who spoken earlier. Now, it is very unfortunate, but again, the world change is permanent and consistent. And there are things we can control, there are other things we cannot control. One of the evolutionary world on all fronts, economically,
Mr. Shola, it
and
seems,
also difficult control among all of these factors. Yeah.
Mr. Shola, are you there?
Seems his network is very bad.
Yes, yes.
Also, yeah. Yes, I hear you, but I just need to confirm that you.
We can hear you now. Please go ahead. Mr. Shola, are you there?
Oh, okay, so yes, I'm right here.
Okay.
May I proceed now?
Yeah, proceed, please.
Okay, so there are two angles that I will look at the impact of the economic situation on the relationship between public relations and media. One of the ways to look at it is that the quest for survival, first of all, on the downside, the economic crunch has reduced the ability of established media to continue to stay business. As we speak, some of the older newspapers and media houses that we grew up with are no longer in operation because they can hardly sustain their economics. They could hardly sustain business. Now, the world is evolving. You also have the evolution of the new media that is cheaper to operate, that has wider reach. The invention of the World Wide Web was a complete game changer that impacted the practice of established media. So what that has done is that it affects of the, but it does open up new platform for public relations to use. So there's a crunch. There are better and more efficient in the present world. So you see convergence platforms like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook puts the characters of the printed word and electronic media together on one platform. This used not to be so. But it's also cheaper to run this platform than it is to run a newspaper, for example. So the established media is struggling to keep its head above the waters, but the new media is smiling to the banks and is smiling. Now, all the first facets of media are competing for the attention of the same audience. But what that means is that significant advertising funding and public funding to establish media now go into new media. So the other thing that I would show, for instance, is influence. There are some negative trends that are evolving among practitioners. Today, I see what I term commoditization of sacred acts by some media organizations. Once in practice, we say facts are sacred, documents are free. But we have evolved the attempt to survive. The survival of media has raised certain risks in the practice of the profession itself. When facts and truth are commoditized, it becomes difficult to earn reputation just by being good. Let me give an example of what I mean by that. And this is talking about how the crunch has affected the relationship between the media and public relations. When organizations, for instance, and the media particularly Nigerians, sometimes refuses to mention the name of such organization except they pay. So you find a piece of news report that decides what will happen, but excludes the name of the organization. Everything we learn in journalism, that is odd. But the organizations are required to pay before their names could be mentioned in this positive news item. So that's what I mean by commoditization of fact. So that's creates tension between publications and the media. I mean, there's a lot more we can see as time goes on, but these are small implications as I see them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we go to our host. Mrs. Obi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You are the host. You are the major comrade on the street here. You represent the CSOs. So we look at this for you as organizations enabling citizens to claim their rights and shaping development. How will CSOs and your organization in particular appraise the media's response to the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Mujid. And if you want me to claim to be the host when you are the journalist against poverty, you and Lola organizing, that is giving me too much than I can have. I want to say a big well done to all of you, and I want to say congratulations on the Press Freedom Day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indeed, very unique. So congratulations to all journalists. We celebrate with you. At one time, I had a stint with journalism, so claims as well. And I want to say, big well done to journalists, Nigerian journalists. Despite all the odds, and a number of our colleagues who are on the panel today will bear me witness about the struggle of journalists, across the times and across the tide of the military rule, and then coming down to we struggled for democracy as activists. We struggled for democracy, we got democracy, we put it down, and we gave it to people who were not perhaps ready, and we too were not ready to take on responsibilities. I want to say that over time, as a civil society organization, we have worked along with journalists because they are also activists, they have been part of the civil society. There isn't a clear distinction in terms of who is in the media and who is in the civil society. So I want to say a big well done to each and every one of you. And Dapo is here, who has stayed true to himself and also to the spirit of activism, to the socialist movement, and being true and walking till today and sitting on the chair and still struggling, continuing that tide. I think in the end, it will be what kind of person, what is the quality of the person, or what is the determination of the person who becomes a journalist. Every journalist that I have, those who have walked through the struggle with us are all, activists, including Mujid, who is talking. We have all been through the trenches together. I think in terms of assessment, they have really, really worked hard. And without the media, we couldn't have gone to many places where we could go to, where we have been. And that's why we really count the media as a very serious ally, and an ally that should be given serious attention, and also given the enabling environment and the backup that they need and the solidarity that they need to be able to perform. So I'm not separating, journalists from, the civil society. What we require is that we need a lot of unity. We need a lot of formation to backstop, journalists in creating the enabling environment. If the journalists are the ones who are speaking for the poor and the most vulnerable, and we are the most, vulnerable as well, we have seen, I really again congratulate Journalists Against Poverty, which we have helped to facilitate, and we will facilitate others. We will continue to work with journalists, across the country in the plight of the poor. You could see what happened, in what part of the country. Journalists have been arrested because you are saying, he went on investigation, and the investigation says he did not even publish it somewhere. He published it on Facebook, and so you arrest a journalist and you charge that journalist to court. I think what this is a ridiculing environment and very ridiculing experience to any journalist to be arrested because you posted something on the Facebook. The world has moved on. You can post anything anywhere. If you are telling the truth, the owners will lie on those who are saying you didn't do the right thing to prove the burden of proof. It will lie on them. What are you accusing the journalists for? And I think we need to come to the point where if you touch one, you touch everyone. As a student, when we were in the university, we had the Ganifa and chambers that provided backup for all students across the country. Gani may not be here today, but there are so many other people. We still have Femi Falana, who is still on ground, still defending, any activist who's wrong, has been impeached on. We have the Nigerian Bar Association. We need to work with our constituency and also Federation of International Women Lawyers. This is our constituency, and I think we need to focus and reunite ourselves with our constituency to ensure that when you touch any journalist, you have touched us. We must unite and defend journalists together. And so in total appraisal, in terms of the pandemic, the journalists are the ones that have been bringing the stories to people. There have been, media appraisal every day, almost every day by the, Joint Task Force, the task force on COVID-19. What has been happening, I remember what is happening in Kano. It was journalists that opened it up, that hundreds of people are dying. What is happening? There's a statistic. And how many members of the Kano, COVID-19 committee were tested positive? The news we're having now, all the information we're having now is because of them, because of journalists. So we are not going to go the whole because you have violated something. I would say we need to be aware of the forces. I used to think that COVID-19 is something that is an equalizer. It should open up the pandemic for people to know that in this world we are together. In this world we are equal. And when the time comes, you are just going to go home the same way I'm going to go home, both the rich and the poor. And I thought that COVID-19 would touch them to face reality, the kind of health facilities that we have, the kind of systems that have been neglected, and people, the politicians going out to go and, go for health tourism somewhere and so forth, with the kind of beautiful workforce, human resources and material resources we have in the country. I think our appraisal is that we have worked with journalists very well. They have done great jobs and they should be protected, and we will continue to protect. I want to pledge that action to say that if you touch any journalist anywhere, we will trace, but we want to work with all the lawyers in the country, all the other members of the constituency, to ensure that we provide a backup. So where there is a name, of a journalist, please let us know immediately if there is anything that happens to journalists. It's not going to be like before. Just like if you touch any woman now, it's not going to be the same anymore. And so I want to say well done again and congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. All right, thank you so much, ma'am. So I'm going back to Comrade Dapo now. We have a question here from the attendees of this roundtable. This one is from Bemiga Ogunleye. Bemiga is asking you, sir. He says, how do we get the media managers to effectively get on board the digital train? How do we get the media managers to effectively get on board digital train?
Well, so how do we get them? Well, first, of course, it's through education. Greater awareness of our environment. I think And it's a very good question. I think I should ask because it then speaks to the reality of everything we do in the media. Um, of everything that we do, I think it is possible to crunch it into three broad categories. The question of how do we cover the events, institutions, people, and processes through which we provide education, information, and all that. So that's one major part of what media tends to do. The second broad, and I'm just putting them very broad categories now. The second, which is also a consequence of the first, is then how do you get this information to people? In other words, how do you distribute what has been produced? So the first part speaks to the production of information. The second part speaks to the distribution of the information. The third part of a broad category, how our work acquires consequence, is then how do you finance the process of that production and distribution, which is just generally called the financing of journalism. One thing that is clear, and you can date the transition to digital to say 1996, effectively from that point on, with the development of telecommunication, with the movement of both production and distribution of our products as media, everything has gradually shifted and it's from full circle as it were now to that point which you could then call digital. I suspect that's the point that Shola, friend, characterized as new and legacy media. That's broad dichotomy that. So how do we then get people to understand, often in history, this transitional period when you move from what appears to be an existing system to an emergent system tends to be very blurry. And then it's often then some people. So I would say that with respect to the entry into journalism, first curriculum in journalism should radically reappraise and come to an awareness of the new reality of digital. For those of us in the industry who are already existing, what's most important, or if you like, was perhaps a matter of urgency, is to see how those who manage media at this point come to understand that transition and then put effective leverage on the financing of our production and our distribution systems, and then see how this can then help. So in short, just to summarize exact presentation, I will then say that how to do it is to create quick training programs that puts innovation at the heart of what we currently do, knowing fully that this is the way that we can manage the current crisis. Mrs. Gwemade made the point earlier, and the truth is it is unlikely that what we consider to be media as media at this point, Shola is a little bit optimistic about it, but the truth that, new media on the face of it is smiling to the bank is really not true. So both, print, I doubt if print, as we understand print, will be able to to exist into third quarter of this year. That's, I'm not being pessimistic, but that's just reading, that's what the data is suggesting. I mean, broadcasting is really, really under the water. That is the truth. So we'll be in trouble. The point that NLN is saying, how do you build democracy? How do you build systems of development without media? At the heart of every democracy is media, is the central institution of accountability. And so that then follows that we really need something urgent, and it's not only in Nigeria, it's a global problem. But the sad thing is that I think in Nigeria, we're now seeing the urgency about it, both at policy level and also sadly at the level of practitioners. It's not something that one person can do in its little corner. It's a system problem. For if you're thinking of development, if you're thinking of democracy building, you must then think of how to build the media that will be able to support all these processes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, comrade. So a follow-up question would be that, would merger and acquisition save the media from collapse? Still to you, comrade Dabo.
No,
merger.
I know that this is a market proposition. There's no evidence that it's the best way to work. It's failing even at the heart of the industrial West. I mean, if you bunch all the Nigerian newspapers together today, fundamentally, if we don't understand the logic of, I mean, scale is important, but scale in itself does not provide an answer for a logic of a system that has transited. And I think this is where perhaps what scale can do is that provide the resources, because how to finance the media is the central point in debate here. Can government finance media? Government as a financing mechanism for media has proved to be totally a failure. And just look at it, government media all over the country. I don't know, left alone that you're just giving them handouts. If you leave them to really function, I mean, none of them can make it. The private equity framework, the market system of funding media itself is in trouble. And look at all the newspapers today. The news, certainly this week, is that even strong newspapers like The Punch, I mean, so I'm just saying that, market in a very theoretical sense doesn't provide answers in this regard. So there are new models. So new models of how to finance media is what we then have to start interrogating and see whether, and the point I'm just making is that at the heart of it is innovation. How do you innovate every element of what we currently do, from production to distribution of that category we call media in every respect, to then face the new challenge of a new market structure, a new technological structure, and a new political structure. So acquisition and mergers, in a very general way, it has not helped banks. Access Bank is under the water. It's probably going to collapse. It has not helped the airlines. So, I mean, it's a buzzword that just comes from, the Harvard Business School kind of thinking, but then which really actually has no meaning. So, but yes, I mean, there are new tools to understand these things, but not as simple as that. Thank you.
All right. I see Comrade Funke nodding her head. Ma, you have some things to add to what you just said.
Gondakwa has been in this business for so long. And I always say that it is not how many PhDs or whatever schools you've gone into that makes you a great journalist. It is the experience in the newsroom, it's the experience on the job. So for us in the media, we look up to people like Dakpolo Oriomi because he's our professor. Like he said, mergers, acquisition, buzzwords. We need to, if you have been here and you were there and you see where we are now, you will know that the media as we used to know it no longer exists. Because if Punch is complaining and feeling the pinch, you just can only imagine what the others are going through. The ones that are not so old, not so strong, the ones that have not even invested so much. So mergers, acquisition, I don't even see who wants to merge with who. But I'll quickly go back to the talk about the question by Mr. Ogunleye about how do we get media managers to get on the digital train. Now, the digital train is moving very fast. For media managers, they do not have the energy in so many ways to get on this fast-moving train. And the reasons are many. It's not because they are not trained or they have not gone to retrain or they're not aware that this is the only train that is leaving the station. But you see, you have 320, 400 people whose fate lies in your hands. And you wake up one morning and you are thinking the way to go is digital. The easiest thing to do is to just go into the newsroom and say, well, you guys need to train. You guys need to know that you have to file your stories from wherever you are. Everybody must be armed with a camera, get a very sensitive telephone, and all of that. That's the easy part. The media managers have to consider all the other departments in a media house. So it's a difficult decision because whether you like it or not, clear thinking and clear execution of your clear thinking. You need to now all your drivers. Do you need an accountant, an accounting officer, an accounting executive? You're going to lay them off because as you shrink your operations, a lot of things will happen. But we are finally here. That day of judgment for all of us is here. Fortunately, COVID-19 made us race into that season quite quickly. Whether we want to face these, well, you know, delaying this, facing up to what has happened or what is happening, is no longer there. You are being forced right now, and it's frightening. It is frightening. I hope we'll have enough time to talk about the consequences of all of us going digital, because it is easier said than done.
Yeah.
I've been CEO of a media organization, and I knew that I needed just a few people to go digital. What am I going to do with everybody? And then when I lay them off, what is going to happen to them? What will be the spiral effect of laying off 1,000 journalists, 1,000 IT savvy human beings, able-bodied with dependents? I hope we'll have time today to talk about it. But the way it is, new media, digital media is the way to go. But it's going to come with more problems. Like Mr. Loriyomi said, the new media is not smiling to the bank. The print media, I assure you, is not going to the bank at all, whether they're smiling or frowning. They're not going to the bank. They've stopped going. So if the broadcast media is underwater, so what exactly is happening to us? Like I said about 2 years ago, it's beginning to look like we're a dying craft, like we're a dying sector of professionalism. What are we going to do? It really worries me. I don't have all the answers, but we can start by talking about the implications of going new media. All of us going digital will mean that if you have 100 people working in an organization, you need just 10 or 12. What are you going to do with the remaining?
All right.
That's what we should talk about because of shrinking operations. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. So I'll quickly dwell a little bit on marketing strategies, media marketing strategies. And credibility has been, a key marketing tool for the media. And then for the ordinary Nigerian, the average Nigerian, credibility to him or her is public interest. What interests me, what concerns me, what affects my life. How do we define public interest? Who should define public interest? So this is directed to both Comrade Funke and Comrade Dapo.
I'll let Mr. Lauren Yomi go first.
Well, my president, so I'll take the cue. Well, I think public interest, at least from the perspective of the media, so that we don't make too much of an abstraction of it, derives from how we get a mandate as an institution. And that public interest is the embedded framework of Section 22 of our Constitution, which says it's the duty of the media to hold power accountable. So that accountability principle, that accountability motive, in relation to political and economic systems, is what, from the point of view of the media, is what represents the public interest. Because the understanding is that in a democracy, and that's the only context that we need to discuss these, because the role of media outside a democracy is not what we're talking about here. So, but in a democracy, the central role of the media, and this is not only, because what Section 22 of our own Constitution is the same in every democracy. There's a clause that speaks to that same Section 22 in every democracy. So that is where the nature of the public interest goals of the media is, how to hold power accountable in such a way that it then makes democracy consequential in the life of people, and how it translates, how you hold officials responsible, and how you hold them accountable to their responsibility. Otherwise, if you then define it outside that framework, it becomes too abstract and becomes a very philosophical brainstorming that then has no active reference.
Okay. If we look at public interest and look at Section 22, it means that we are the watchdog, like they say. And like I've said on many occasions, a hungry, distressed dog is going to look out for itself and not going to look out for anybody. A hungry watchdog is an angry watchdog. And that is not a dog that will be holding anybody accountable, because it's not even thinking straight. It's not even in the right frame of mind. These heavy duty consequences of shrinking operations, of job losses, will affect public interest. Public interest now should ordinarily be what concerns you, what concerns, it should be about the greater good, and how it affects the greater number. But right now, the people who are supposed to watch out and hold power accountable are not in a good place. Public interest will disappear from a good place.
All right, Ma. So I'm asking this because of a question by one of the participants. Akin says, how can the journalists be free to carry out their function, especially journalists working directly with government, journalists covering state house, particularly in state-owned media organizations? How can they survive? More of the journalists have become more PR of the government. How can a journalist that is passionate but posted to this place, how can they really do their job?
Things are going to, until we fix the problem, things are going to consistently get worse. A Mojid Alabi working for a state-owned media. So if his organization can no longer help him fulfill his obligations to his dependents, to his family, what is he supposed to do? The ones working in state-owned media, their jobs are already cut out for them. They are not designed or employed to go against those who...
No, Comrade, we lost you there.
Who pay. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. So if you want to be a Dapo Oloriyomi, you know that you cannot work for a state-owned media. So can we all be in a state-owned media, or can we all be Dapo Oloriyomi? We are going to have to reassess what we are, what we're doing. But for me, those in state-owned media have their jobs cut out for them. If you are very passionate about investigative journalism, it's not that those in state-owned media don't do investigative journalism. They do, because I'm here heading one. But what they are investigating is different from what Mojid wants to investigate. And the kind of things that Dapo Oloriyomi wants as breaking news is not what we will want in state-owned media. So their jobs are different, their passions have to be different. So we'll leave Mojid Alabi to do his passionate thing and look for the hungry people, the children that are out of school. The state-owned media houses too are doing their thing. Everybody will just have to work according to who picks the bill.
Okay, I see Comrade Dapo shaking his head, nodding his head before.
Oh, no. I was just trying to affirm to the point that, yeah, when we do investigative journalism, it's not necessarily when you are raising issues that affect, the government failure. Well, obviously, government failure is often tied to some of this. I'm just saying that, you can do it about the structure of agriculture, why crop failure, why the health services, how the roads have lack of roads and lack of market access. I mean, so investigation is far the way technically the way that is defined is to say that a story that has an overwhelming public interest, often that tries to be revelatory, especially around what some power structures are trying to hide, and then that is also so that doesn't necessarily to be of a overtly political nature, or how people have stolen some money in parliament. I mean, it can be a big story of how, weather systems are changing, and then that's going to lead to the kind of thing that, you now have that really put the world on edge. How the whole climate structure is moving bats, and perhaps that is in a way linked with how plagues, epidemics, pandemics grow. And how, so I mean, the investigation is far bigger than the very same. I mean, I'm just affirming to what my
what you
friend
said.
has said. Yeah, so
All right, sir. So now on over to Comrade Mojid. Are you there?
Yeah,
Mojid Alabi. All right.
Yeah, thank you very much. Uncle Shola, I'm sure you have listened to them. I'm sure you have listened to them, and you have listened to them very well. Mrs. Egbamade has described the media as a distressed dog, hungry one. And as a result, I'm sure we have seen some of the consequences, just like she said. Now we have too many platforms out there. You have a lot of blogs, you have a lot of social media platform functioning as a media house, media platforms. You also have what we call citizen journalists, who now use 5 megabyte, 10 megabyte to broadcast, and they have, in one way or the other, they are doing what journalists ordinarily do as well. What do you think? How do you cope with, particularly looking at the way you relate as a public relations expert? Do you suffer blackmail more now than before? Do you think that the new media system is well organized to at least carry out the duty or the real duty of journalists?
Thank you very much, Mujid. And I would like to piggyback on Uncle Daxon's and his Egwemode's initial or earlier submissions. This is one of the most difficult times in human history to be a journalist. There are all kinds of dilemma that the media practitioner is confronted, and some of them have been thrown up here today. How do you balance your personal financial needs, which is the primary reward for your employment, to meet your family needs? How do you balance that with the need to do what you have passion for, what you have trained for? Are you going to stick to it because this is what you have prepared yourself for, even though it doesn't pay your bills? Or are you going to take a different decision to explore something else that pays your bill, even if there are violations of your principles? I mean, these dilemmas are unending, and they are many, and they keep evolving as our reality evolves. Something I must point out here, from the standpoint of public relations, we broaden our own definition of media significantly beyond just journalism, just the news media. So my reference is going to go beyond just journalism, even though I was speaking about journalism. There's something financial pressure does to even the principled person. It puts tremendous amount of pressure on your morals, on your ethics. And I don't know, I don't have the statistics of comparative occurrences of blackmail and before and now. But what I can tell you is that from the standpoint of public relations, there are more options now of media platforms to deploy for public relations purposes. What that has done, it has reduced reliance on the news media. It doesn't mean it has taken away reliance on the established news media as we knew, but it has offered additional options, many more options that are less expensive, to the public relations practitioner. Don't forget, from the standpoint of public relations, it's about your audience, particularly your critical audience. The news media wants to pass information to the entire population. But I think, taking something from Uncle Dako's submission, I think it's important for people to understand that media practice is different from media enterprise. And he did make a point that most people who went into the media industry are not necessarily businessmen. They are journalists who had to run a business because their profession requires a business to be run. But it is very important for us to remember that journalism is an art, it's a trade, but media is a business. And now, how big applying for any business to survive, there are certain principles that need to be applied. It's difficult for a business to be populist and be profit-making at the same time. I'm saying simple, it's just difficult. Now, from the way the media, the news media in particular, is postured, the media draws its legitimacy, its authority, its credibility from a mandate that is not constitutional, need to hold leadership accountable, which means their responsibility is to the people. So it's primarily, the media is not profit, but for you to be able to pay your staff, you need to make money. And in order to make money, you need to run a business as a business. Mm-hmm. Now, remember, public institutions are not profit-oriented. So journalists who work, media practitioners who work for public institutions are not working for a profit-oriented organization. That's why they have to work within the human resource administration of public service, which is different from running a private enterprise. Now, when you have the emergence of the new media offers creative platforms that allows people to monetize in different forms to convert their product to reward from both from advertisers, from different other sources. Established media needs to innovate. There is no way to survive. Innovation is key. And I can't be prescriptive around what those innovations will be, but my point being that it is very important to highlight the enterprise aspect of media concept and differentiate it from the practice, the professional aspect of it, because they are complementary. The business is running to make sure the profession is the commodity that is being traded in that business. So we need to apply business principles to the running of media organizations and also innovate. For public relations, it's very unfortunate that the world is evolving, and the media industry is not the only industry that is being hit. Several other industries are being hit. And don't forget, embedded in the practice of journalism and the media is the factor of technology. The factor of technology. Every mediated message is mediated through some form of technology. So as technology evolves, so does the platform and the practice of the media itself. The media needs to wake up to this, and we cannot do things the same way and expect a different result. And what is happening to us? You mentioned citizen journalism. People, you find individual bloggers who have more followers online than some established newspapers. What that means is that you have more people paying attention to this individual whose overhead is less than the salary of one employee, and compared to an established institution like the one in Segewo they had, that had several hundreds of employees who may not be getting as much attention by the public as an individual who has very little overhead. It's the way the world is evolving, and the media must seek to evolve with it. I hope my response has been helpful somewhat.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Shola. Let's now go. I think we have heard so much about the problems. We have heard so much about the challenges being faced. And I'll go to Mrs. Obi, why the search for solutions begin. We need to now look straight into what are the possible ways to address the challenges facing the media industry. So I go to Mrs. Obi with this question. Mrs. Obi, you represent CSO, and for serious CSOs to remain objective, they have been operating through funding received from independent donors. So do you think, based on your experiences running civil society organizations, what lessons do you think the media can borrow from your operational funding system at this critical time?
Thank you very much. I've been listening. It's really it's a beautiful day indeed. You know, reconnecting with people and then hearing some of the things that is being said here. One, I want to first, before I address that, go to what some of the things that Funke pointed out. I think one of it, I will ask that will be subtle, hungry ones, the issue of looking for hungry ones. When I heard that word, it pinched my soul that, you know, they're referring to Nigerians as, I understand what you mean in the context of those who are the bureaucrats, those who are looking for jobs, who just want to pick a job, who want to earn a living. But I think we need to look at addressing them with dignity as well. Nigerians are trained, just like Shola said, Nigerians are trained with a specific profession. If you go to read communications or journalism, you know, if you go to the schools, you want to come out, you go to the media houses. So I'm even happy with the separation of saying you have the media house, you also have the journalists, you know, some of the things that needs to be done. Yes, those who are activists, and you rightly pointed it out, like people with Mojid and who will follow their passion. And I can say that in those days of the struggle for democracy in Nigeria, the struggle against military rule, we in the civil society, there wasn't real separation between activists and the journalists. That for Yomi's house was known to all of us. We go to his house like any other, and we go to each other's house. We are free to connect with people. And I think we need to bring that level of activism back so that we can defend the younger ones who have gone in, you know, to do something. Because the reality of earning something, earning a living and being able to pay salaries is something that we have to deal with. And as we're dealing with the issue of stimulus, which is now coming, Nigeria is borrowing a lot of money. When they come down now, which private sector? We need to look at the media in the mix of the private sector, that if you want to put stimulus, you want to do certain things, you should realize that the media is housing a lot of journalists who are your citizens, and they need to be paid, and they need to be protected, because they're also paying taxes, you know, from a lot of ways. I thought I would put that, you know, into the discussion. In looking at where we are in terms of operational, I think again, we have to deal with the issue of the quality of the person. What do you want to get out of things? If, like Journalists Against Poverty, we have a tradition, or let me say it's a value that we have, that we promote everybody to be radical. You have to have the courage of conviction, to be radical and be bold, but of course be humble. That's one of the things that we bring on board, you know, in ActionAid. And being radical does not mean that you're going to be insulting to people. You have to have your facts. You need to check your facts. You need to be bold enough to be open to air your views. But of course, you should have checked your facts. Even in the house as we talk, you know, Lola is there. They need to be, being a country director does not mean that I cannot be challenged. They can be anytime, but of course they have their facts. And if you challenge me on something that I can see, you go down and change it. And so it comes also to the people that you take money from, funding you. If you cannot stand and tell them the truth, then you are not about being you know, you don't need to benefit from them. You need to set your objectives, which whoever we take money from, it needs to align with our objectives, our beliefs. I won't go and take money from people who do not have a common denomination, you know, in terms of the environment. We use human rights-based approach to programming in all of the things that we do. So if you're an organization that is not moving towards that environment and you bring your money, you can bring 100 million. Actually, it is not going to take it, because we believe that you need to be able to look at others as well. Now, when you are looking at an environment, one of our comrades here asked a question about how do you sensitize the media? You know, how do you sensitize them to be able to play their roles? And I'm looking at it, I said, it actually has trained hundreds of journalists, you know, build the capacity, not trained because they come with a lot, you know, enhance the capacity of many media houses or many journalists in the last couple of years, and we will continue to do that. And those are some of the ways to strengthen their capability and also their capacity. We have to face the reality of the fact that many people are finding it difficult to pay salaries and a lot of things being done. We have to face the reality of the private entity, you know, having to make ends meet. It's not just moving away from where we are and going to the next level. I think this is a new dawn. The digitalization is a new dawn. Whatever we are doing at the moment, we have to align with the things where we are. And I want to really say well done again to Journalists Against Poverty and all the journalists that we have had to work with. You need to be able to stand firm. What we need to do more is to organize ourselves in a way that we can believe in each other. If somebody is arrested somewhere, let us know. Let us open the backup of the civil society environment, that we need to work together. This country belongs to us. We need to work together. The fact that we may be funding, you know, Journalists Against Poverty or other media organizations, we can fund, but if you don't tell us the truth, if you don't stand to tell us the truth, then we lose it. Someone else is going to tell us something else. You that is closer to somebody should stand up for the truth and tell people the truth. And so for us, it's not business as usual. It's not going to be that because somebody is giving you money. And I can say that directing, and I'm leading a team of more than 100 staff, at least the core staff. We have partners in the 36 states plus the FCT that are working really hard, and our own stand for the true transparency and accountability at all times, whether you are being funded, somebody is giving you money or not. You know what, if you are working with a small organization, for the journalists, even when you are working with your editors who may not carry your stories all the time, when they want to seek for truth, they know who to look for. They will go for that person. They know who is not telling the truth. They know who is easily bendable. And so reliability, you know, is a very, you know, and not being a liability is another issue. Even when your editors say no, they know who you are. And that will always stand the test of time. And like, you know, the Guardian says, truth will always stand the test of time. And I think we need that energy. The energy we need is with what we need to do.
Yeah, before you, okay, Lola, before you come in, let me quickly just raise this. It could be answered by either Mrs. Egbemode or Mr. Olorunyomi. I've actually spoken, maybe I will even prefer Mr. Olorunyomi to answer it. That creativity, people have been talking here and have been emphasizing that for the media to survive, there should be creativity, innovation. But someone here has actually told me that creativity sometimes leads to subjectivity. Do you agree with that view, Mr. Olorunyomi, that creativity in terms of funding could lead to subjectivity?
No, I don't. I think it's a false. I think it's a false. I mean, you have to be. Yeah, that's right. You have to be creative anyway. But being creative, which is a point I think Shola was stressing, is not. I think the point is that to understand that innovation, and let me just try to extend the point he's made, is that, you know, is that we are in a new age, and the new age is a digital age, and you cannot use the logic and principles of pre-digital to operate in it. And in a sense, be transitioning to digital doesn't necessarily just mean, you know, having a laptop or just having a phone. To these are tools of digital, true, but it's at the heart of it is an understanding that the component of information in totality have become data driven, and media institutions in themselves have become willy-nilly, they like it or not, by the new logic of digital, have become very simple microcosm of technological companies. It doesn't mean that they are tech companies, but the reality of their operations today is essentially driven by a logic that that demands of them, you know, to follow technological principles. Part of the current crisis is a lack of awareness to understand that a data and technological principle is what is driving the operations that we're having, and we're still imposing a more mechanical, a pre-digital principle on it, and that's the asymmetry I think that is happening in the industry. Uh, so the point then is, so it's not creativity, because there's a lot of creativity in current Nigerian newspapering. Mrs. Egwemade tried to speak about that earlier. What is lacking really, Shola's is given it, you know, a superlative representation, innovation. What is lacking is innovation. To understand that, you know, we tend to work around a central organizing principle that says we need to compete. So but how do you change the logic of competition to mean something? So you need an innovative principle to help you make that transition. But let me just make this quick point. The key challenge for innovation in current or contemporary media is to understand that the mode of financing media is not growing. Because if you look at media, how to finance journalism, you understand that is, on the one hand is advertising, and on the other hand, if it is print, mostly, you know, it is sales, circulation. None of these two categories are growing. So how then do you want? I mean, so it's impossible. Advertising has almost transitioned completely to digital advertising, and there's no Nigerian newspaper today that is selling 50,000 copies. That's even exaggeration. So how can that finance? So the key challenge for innovation is to go, as they say, that is the core of the matter. That's where you have to borrow the energy and the imagination into. And say, how do you innovate around these two key principles? Because if you then don't know how to finance media at this point, then you can't do the production correctly, and then you can't distribute it correctly. And then so all the problems that both Shola and Mrs. Egbemode has adequately and competently, you know, laid on the table would become the norm in the industry. So that is it. So it's not so much creativity in that. So creativity is just an aspect of innovation, but it's a more holistic framework called innovation that means you need a paradigm shift. You need a mental shift from how you were doing something here to so how. And then that also means that you understand that what you're doing in itself the last point I make about this, just to give a quick analogy, is just because I don't think newspapers necessarily need to die. I mean, they don't have to die, but this kind of millenarian comments always come at the point of anxieties like these. I always joke with my friends, when, you know, photography emerged in the world, because, you know, the way to represent images and subjects in the past was through drawing, artistic representation in that sense. And everybody said, okay, that's the end of art. You know, it's not going to happen again. You know, photography has taken over. But, you know, today, you know, art is booming, photography is booming. So that's just a way to say that, you know, there's a time everybody thought that the New York Times was going to go down. But because it went back, thought through this process, revamped its own digital department, and it's far more profitable company today than, you know, the Washington Post. You know, it's a great newspapers that everybody thought would go down forever, but they're getting stronger. So I mean, their ideas out there. That's the point I'm saying, and I don't think so. But if we don't get into the game of innovation, then we are not. And innovation only helps to strengthen professionalism. It doesn't weaken it. No, that's the point I think I was trying to make. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Talking about solutions still, the Nigerian Guild of Editors is meant to speak to solutions to many of these issues we've raised today. So I'll direct this to Antikunke. As the past president of Nigerian Guild of Editors, what are the recommendations in points that you've given us today on some of the issues we've raised? Particularly, you've mentioned earlier that journalists, some of them will be laid off this year, particularly those that are in print. The fact that the media is struggling. So for instance, now, as a journalist, if I'm laid off this year, how can I pick up the pieces? How can I continue to move on? What can I do to survive at this time? And how can we start to regulate the new media? What is the NGE, Nigerian Guild of Editors, doing around that?
Okay. No longer the president of the NGE. But when I was president, I led a delegation of my exco and to the presidency. And we had a meeting with Vice President Yemi Osinbajo because it had become clear even then. And I'm talking, I think this meeting happened in 2018. It had become obvious that this Armageddon was bearing down on us, and we should let the government know that it has to intervene. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, if government intervenes, they're also going to ask for something back. You see, with journalists, we always find ways of picking up the pieces and moving on. A lot of journalists have been in 12 media houses. A lot of them can, find ways of doing new things, but not all of them will survive. So I would like to, after our discussion, I cited examples of interventions in telecoms, of government interventions in telecoms, bailing out state government, bailing out banks, and all of that. So how come it's okay for us to be watchdogs? How come it's okay for us, for the armed forces to come to us to consider national security when we are reporting Boko Haram? And then when we have a need, everybody just moves on. We help build people, we help build careers, we help build politicians, we help build banks, we help build everything, and then we are allowed to just fizzle away. But we are not begging that was not the Nigerian Guild of Editors begging. That was the Nigerian Guild of Editors drawing attention to a situation that was looming and is finally here. I think it's Mr. Adebawo who mentioned something about, I think in response to Mojid, something about blackmail. And then look at objectivity, subjectivity. The season of blackmail is what is looming now. And what is happening in the media is a national security issue. It is a security matter. Now, because if as CEO of a media organization, I'm going digital, I'm going to go along with most of my trained journalists, the professionals. So I'm going to reduce the number of people. I mean, I don't even need anybody in the circulation department. What does that mean for government if I lay off my legal team and just retain a legal firm? What does that mean for the lawyers that I've told to go? What does that mean for the account department? What does that mean for those working in my pre-press? What does that mean for those working in admin? I mean, the drivers are going to go. And the spiral effect on those selling newsprint, because I no longer need newsprint if I go 100% digital. That's why I said it is a security matter. Now, because the people you are laying off are able-bodied, like I said before, they are IT savvy, they have had access to information for years. Are they going to use it to blackmail? Because whatever we think the social media is doing to politicians now will be nothing compared to what is ahead. Because these ones have real information usable even in the court of law. Do we really want to go that route? Because job losses will mean that we are compounding our social, our national security issues. My thought is, if there can be interventions in other sectors of the economy, this is also a business. Media houses are businesses because they pay tax, because they remit pension. You cannot treat them like, okay, they are on their own, they let them go figure it out. It's because they're analog that they're in trouble. What are the consequences of the media being in trouble? Because when you lay off thousands of people who have good education, don't even think they're just going to go home, fold up, and wait for death to come. They're going to have to find questionable means of earning a living, of fulfilling their obligations. I will want a situation just like I discussed with Vice President Oshibajo that day with my exco, then that the government must find a way to intervene. Because if the more we ignore our problems and let them spiral into national security issues, the more money we'll have to deploy into defense. Because you will have to fight trouble on different fronts. What we have on our hands is COVID-19. And the fact and the way our numbers are growing is a reflection of the things we left undone. If we leave this one also as something that, okay, if we ignore it not long enough, it's going to go away, it will be a monster waiting for us in our future, just like coronavirus. We cannot ignore the problem in the media because it will catch up with us. We do not have a society like the American society where there are shock absorbers, where there is social security. There are people that will be laid off soon whose organizations have not remitted their pensions. And they will have to find ways of surviving. I will use this opportunity to call on the government, not just the federal government, because everybody will pay if this spirals into a coronavirus in the future. And that future is not very far away. It's very close. So as we innovate, and I take all my reporters and we go digital, let's think of the drivers. Let's think of the number of people we are going to lay off, because the core professionals may just be able to survive. They may not be able to. You notice that in the past, in 2-3 years, there will be new media houses springing up that will challenge the old ones to treat their staff better, buy new cars, invest in new equipment, and all of that. There's been no new investment in the media industry for years. So any number of things are liable to go wrong from here on. Everybody who can pitch in should see it as a national security issue. We need to all come together, save that industry, while we encourage the media managers to digitize. Otherwise, there will be a COVID-19 waiting for the media in the future.
All right. So, Comrade Dapo, I would like to come to you, but before that, our participants, we would like to hear from you as well. So you can kindly raise your hand if you want to contribute verbally. If you want to contribute verbally, just raise your hands and I will unmute you to take your questions or comments or inputs into the discussion. So just check the bar beside you. Just raise your hands. Yes, I see you, Toby. Just raise your hands and then we'll come back to you. And so, Comrade, from what she said, talking about recommendations and solutions to all these things we talked about, what would you like to add?
Well, okay, so it's a very interesting point that she's raised, and I think it's, because I know that she's been raising it for a very long time, she's really concerned about this. I'm a little bit dubious about government intervention, so let me just express my objections in a way. One, I understand the motivations that the media is really in trouble. I also understand the fact that if you don't have a thriving media, you can't have a democracy. There's just no doubt about that. Indeed, the saying that democracy deteriorates only to the extent that the media deteriorates is evidence of the point I think she's making. Because if you don't have a mechanism to hold the political system or even the economic system accountable, then you have a system of brigandage, pretty much what we have in Nigeria in a sense. But I think, where she is right is that how can we invest in this public service institution, as it were, although even if it has a private motive, how can we understand that it is serving a grand purpose of society and then give attention to it? So to that extent, I would say yes. In the United States, which is the home of so-called, private press, there's a subsidy structure that underlines distribution, the post office structure that, subsidizes distribution of newspapers. It's quietly in there. So the UNESCO has a convention which is called the Paris Declaration, which says that products of knowledge and so on requires some kind of subsidy structure. Some tax structure needs to come in consideration of products and institutions of knowledge. So I therefore can see the point that she's making. What I worry, and really what she's saying is, technically it's not odd if you look at it. In the French media development system, there's an appropriation that Parliament makes annually that goes in the development of media. under the central principle that democracy is so important. I mean, media is so important, and democracy project is so important. It must be kept alive. It happens in the Scandinavian countries, 2 or 3 of them. It's even in French West Africa. This is something that also goes about. My problem is that the implementation of this purpose, of this practice rather, in Africa has really been an excuse for governments to manipulate and then um, and effectively control the press. So if you're not friendly to the tone and direction of government, so you don't get the money. And it's easier if parliament is doing this rather than the executive branch is doing it. So these are just logistics and mechanics of working it out. So I'm saying that she's perfectly on the ball. But quite frankly, my view is that if media, of course, you have the right to ask for those reforms. So I support those reforms. But I don't want a bailout from government. I don't want the kind of thing that's, it's a corruption mechanism. That's my view. And so we have to be a little bit just careful. The kind of money that aviation people are asking for, which, as you know, somebody took it away and ran away. Nobody knows where Jimmy Graham is today. The banking system asked for it. All the money that was given, to bail out the banks today, the central bank can't even recoup it, and all the bank barons are still running around the place here. So I'm just saying that's going to be very tough for government not to use it as a mechanism for effective control. The worst thing that happens in a democracy is for government to just shackle and control the media. It makes a whole mess. So if we can get, if you like, a totalizing mechanism that speaks to tax reforms, that talks to some kinds of subsidy on like newsprint, remove, VAT on media products, remove, those kinds of things, because it's a knowledge product. Of course, you do it also for schools, universities, and products like that. That makes sense to me. But I think if media in itself works, as Shola, I think, makes the point, strongly around frameworks of careful innovation, it is possible to be managed properly, to be profitable, and above all, to strengthen its independence. Because it's really, there's nothing like a media lacking independence. And I understand that independence truly is when you lack economic independence. Yeah. That's the point.
All right, sir. All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So we have about 15 minutes to wrap up. So before I come back to get your final thoughts, I would like to go to the participants. I have about 4 people raising up their hands. So to the participants, please, I will unmute you, and then you tell us, you introduce yourself, tell us your name and your medium, and then you make your succinct inputs. 1 minute maximum, please. Thank you. So I'm unmuting you now, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, I've unmuted you. You can talk now.
Okay. Excuse me. Good morning. My name is it's morning here. My name is Emmanuel Toby. Yeah. I work
Speak loud. Please speak louder. We can't hear you clearly.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Emmanuel Toby. I work with Rich Bliss Communication, my private outfit. Yeah. I used to be in Nigeria, but in as much that I appreciate everything everybody have said, we have these issues. I spent 15 good years in journalism in Nigeria before I left Nigeria. We've been saying this issue that because of media independence, we don't want government intervention, but rather it has killed the system. If we continue to say we want media independence and nothing is being done on the welfare of media, it's still going to backfire. Like you said, Mr. Dapo, we have other ways we could also channel those issues, but it is very important that government should intervene because the welfare is a challenging problem. And finally, I want to also, like the question I sent a question, why do we find it very difficult for us to go digital, irrespective of the fact that we don't need everybody to be in the newsroom for news production. COVID-19 has exposed us, and now we realize that we need few people to work in the office, whether broadcast or print. We still find most media houses wanting everybody to be in the office, why we could make sure that people work from outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. So now I'll meet you, Kehinde. Kehinde, you can talk now. Kehinde, you can talk now. Okay, so I'll go to the next person. Gloria.
Okay, thank you so very much. Good morning, respected veterans. My name is Glory Ohago. I work for Voice of Nigeria, and I have listened to every input since I joined in. And if there is one lesson other media house top head need to take from Ene, it's that your idea could not be the only right idea. She said she listens to the fact, and then she would have to submit that, oh, I can go down again and take and rescind on an earlier decision which I thought I was right. But away from that, if the government's own media agencies must innovate, it's time to look into the terms and conditions. When people rise through the ranks of management and they get to the headship position, they maintain the state of this. Am I unmuted? Okay.
Sorry.
So could I continue?
Yes, please, Gloria.
Go ahead.
Okay. So they maintain the position of, this is how I met it. This is the tradition we met, and this is how it has to be. There must be a way, especially when we go for the Guild of Editors, to tell the editors that we moved from typewriters to Macintosh to computers, and now we've gone digital. And with all these changes come different innovations. And so maybe most times these traditions which were handed down from generation to generation cannot stay through generations, because each innovation and each software upgrade comes with different new ideas and ways of doing things. All the same, once again, thank you everyone. Thank you Action Aid for taking the aiding position to ensure that the media get aided. My name is Laurie Ohago. Thank you once again and have a nice day.
Thank you, Glory. Obviously, Glory is a broadcaster, so you can tell that. So I'll meet you now. Moses Idika.
Moses.
Moses, you've been unmuted. Can you speak up, please?
I think his place is very noisy.
Okay, so I'll mute you back. Let's see, Rotimi Lawrence.
Okay. Mr. Oyekomi. I think you said Mr. Ogunleye.
Okay.
Can I speak?
Can you please speak up?
Yeah. Okay. Let me thank all the speakers. I think I've enjoyed their contributions. I share the fears of Mrs. Funke Gbemode. But like Mr. Rogyemi said, I am wary of any government intervention. Already, we have too much going in our lives. And there is a way in which I see it as a contradiction. If the media is to hold government to account, and then we are now going to the same government for a bailout, I think that is a problem.
Yeah.
What I think has happened over the years is journalists or media managers have been slow to respond to changes. The signs have been there all along. For God's sake, I don't think the media employ as much as the textile industry. Where is that industry today?
Yeah.
It's dead.
Yeah.
I'm not aware that all the employees of that industry maybe have now posed security threats to the nation. I think the new lingo in town, which journalists must adhere to and embrace, is you either innovate or you die.
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to take on.
All right, thank you, sir, Mr. Bule. All right, so Kehinde Ayotunji, are you ready to talk now?
I don't see government in
Hello?
Mr. Bule is still on.
At all. Otherwise, you'll be setting a dangerous precedent. If government intervenes in the, if tomorrow.
Okay. All
Can we
right,
have
so,
Mr. Lawrence?
Mr. Rotimi Lawrence.
A very good
Mr.
morning
Lawrence?
to. Thank you very much. My name is Rotimi Oyekomi. I'm a journalist. I'm very pleased to be here. I came in late because I was attending another meeting, but very quickly.
Sorry, you need to describe yourself very well, Mr. Rotimi. Journalist practicing where?
I'm a journalist.
Practicing where?
Well, I used to be with the Guardian, but I'm not with the Guardian anymore. But I'm still a journalist.
Which where?
Please let us excuse him. Let him
excuse. I don't feel free to disclose where I work, but I'm just interested in this topic.
Mr. Rotimi, please proceed.
Thank you very much. You know, I've been listening to Ms. Egbemode for a long time and Mr. Oloruyomi, and I can understand their position. But I think very quickly, my own concern that I have noticed now is the problem about accuracy in reporting. I think that a lot of media organizations are not paying attention to accuracy in reports. What distinguishes a professional journalist from a quack is what we call the strict adherence to the code of conduct of professional journalism. And you get a report and you read it and you find a lot of stories that are not consistent with what happened. And people tend to mix their personal views with what exactly a news item should be. That's a problem. And from my experience, I think that there is an element of fake news in most of the reports, even by the mainstream media organizations. And that's a problem because when people don't trust, you know, this is a country where people don't trust anything government. People have, even in houses, husbands find it difficult to trust their wives. So if you have a problem of trust, you understand, and people turn to you, they are reading your stories, they are reading they are listening to what you are broadcasting, and they are having doubts about it, it's a problem. So if there is trust, I think it's part of what will make media organizations stand out and survive. And then the issue of welfare is also there. Media owners are not paying attention to the welfare of journalists. Just a couple of days ago, for instance, the judicial correspondent of one newspaper was going home after production and took Okada around Apapa and was crushed to death by a trailer, you know. And I just wondered in my head that this young man could have been saved this calamity if that organization had a staff boss that could, you know, that was deployed, that could be deployed to take them home after production at that point in time. So because this welfare issue is there, the problem is there, journalists are now forced to do things they are not supposed to do. And that is also affecting the kind of output that we get. So I think that, professionalism, welfare, those two issues are important, and I want media organizations to pay a lot of attention to that. And the heavyweights we have here, I'm sure they have access to these people if they can, tell them and encourage them. Well, we know there are problems, but you can't separate one from the other. You can't have, you can't have a good media organization when you neglect the welfare of journalists or you don't train them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lawrence. Now we'll unmute Kende. Bimiga Guleye, please, can you speak up, please?
Yeah, Mr. Bimiga Guleye is the provost of NIJ, that's Nigerian Institute of Journalism in Lagos. I think his contribution is also very vital.
Mr.
Have you unmuted him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Bimiga Guleye, are you there, please? Mr. Bimiga.
I think he's gone.
Okay, so.
Okay, still here. He's here.
But he's not speaking out. We have limited time, just 4 more minutes to wrap up. We'll just take 2 more comments and we'll call it quits and get the final feedback or summary from our panelists. Mr. Bemiga, are you there?
Yes, I am. I am there.
Oh, okay, great.
Also, let me quickly thank your panelists for that, for what they have said. I think I've enjoyed participating in this conference. Like I tried to say, I don't think we should encourage government to come into the media at all. The media is like any other business. It's a private enterprise, and the media has its role cut out for it. If we get government money, how then are we supposed to hold the government to account again? It should be a political IOU, which the government try to cash later. I think they try to innovate or perish. So we should not encourage it. I have cause to say somewhere that it is a precedent that we should not set. If we do, then there'll be trouble. Other sectors too will want the government to intervene and give them a bailout. The drivers will want it. The textile workers will want it. And everybody will want it. The thing to do is for media owners and managers to evolve a new business model. The business model that we are using now from the time of Lord has obviously failed. That, I think, is the way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you very much, sir.
That will be the last comment we'll be able to take from the participants, but we hope to keep this conversation going even beyond today. As it says, a lot of things are coming up that we need to keep talking about and finding solutions to. But quickly, we'll go to our panelists to get your last comments from what we said today, recommendations to journalists generally, and wrapping up all the points you've said so far today. I'll start with Mr. Shola.
Thank you very much. I think my parting words would be that the world is here, change is here. If the media as an industry wants to be part of the rest of the world as an industry, it needs to be a business decision. Media organizations should be run as enterprises, and the leaders of those enterprises must be willing and ready to make difficult decisions that makes for business continuity. We cannot continue to practice media as a populist thing and get to make profit. So we will continue to have the challenge of creating a balance.
Totally.
We must continue. Yeah, so there will continue to be the challenge of creating the balance between objectivity, independence, and the need to be a sustainable business. It's not going to be an answer that will be provided in one webinar, but it's something for every one of us to think about. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now I'll go to Auntie Funke. Your final thoughts, please.
Like I said, it is time for government intervention. I'll continue to insist on it, but I will want us to look at it, consider it, and instead of throwing it out, look at it from the angle of Mr. Olorunyomi. Let's look at the modalities that do not keep us in chains. Maybe because I've been president of the guild, maybe because I've been CEO of a traditional media house, I can feel the pain of letting 200 people go and holding 220 to digitize, because I know it was possible for us to go full-blown New Telegraph online, but I didn't need more than 20 people. So if we all decide that we will not take any help from anybody, it's fine, because eventually we will have to, either directly or indirectly. We can look at the modalities instead of looking at it as poison, because that would be throwing away the baby with the bathwater. Let us innovate. Mr. Agbemigo Ogunleye said, innovate or perish. I see the perishing looming and happening quicker than the innovation. Thank you.
We'll try to keep this positive. Comrade Dakwa, please, your final thoughts.
Okay, well, I mean, it's hard to disagree with, so I think, yes, the idea is we need to really quickly innovate. We need legal reforms that make it possible. We need a system that constrains politicians from the excesses of abusing media. But with regards to the true existence of media, that is where the big work is. And this is for media managers and proprietors to put a new thinking cap. We really need to innovate away from the current crisis, and it need not be a very bleak future. There's a future that is possible. So.
All right, thank you so much, Comrade. And Mama, Grandma, please go ahead.
I want to say, I'm really overwhelmed. I'm really happy and excited that this has happened. We never dreamt that this day could come, that we are now having such a huge, about 60 people or more online today, and we are doing it from the comfort of our offices or homes. So I want to say congratulations. 2 quick points that I want to raise there is, I go back to the issue of this investment in the public office, or investment that that government can intervene and put some money. And I'll refer to one of the points that, that were raised. Investment in public service. If you invest in journalism, that's the fourth realm. If you invest in them, you are not doing anybody a favor. You are in the quality of your society. And so I agree, with, Funke, that there is it's important for an intervention. And I want to say something. We need to know that the Nigerian money is our money. The money that they are controlling is your money, is my money. And so they are not doing you a favor. They are not dashing you any money. They are not taking the money from their pockets. Somebody mentioned the textile industries. For me, that's a failure of governance. That's a failure of leaders to retain the kind of textile industry that would have been clothing the world. Because as a Nigerian woman, if you go out anywhere, you don't come back with your clothes because people will buy it, meaning that we have a lot to give. And so I want to take that idea to tell Nigerians to say that the involvement of putting money there into the investment in the human people or into journalists does not mean that you are doing them a favor. We should not shy away from it. We should not run away from it. We need to be able to pull that. I was in school. When I was an undergraduate, I went to school, and there was a time that we went for a meeting at the American Embassy in Cairo. And when we were from 35 universities, when we're supposed to draft the text of a press conference, as a Nigerian, 3 of us were nominated from these 35 countries. We went into a computer lab. This was 1990. But at that time, as a Nigerian student, I was seeing computer in front of me for the very first time. Fortunately, the 2 people, one from Norway and another one from, from Egypt, they tell us what to write because they believe in me. So I was telling them what to write, and that's how they pulled it out. At that time, I did not know where to boot the computer. But almost 10 years down the line, today, the computer is everywhere. Everything is everywhere. So we have to know that digitalization has come for real, but how do we interface? Trying to manage, the whole system of transformation or transition. The other thing I want to say again is, to summarize, is say that today, the theme of today says journalism, without fear or favor. How do we help? How do we unite with the journalists? How do we work with them? What kind of interventions can we uphold, to try to help people to do the work that they're doing? I think it's a great work that you all are doing, and we can do better. Of course, everybody can do better. Let's go into the innovation, but there's a lot more. COVID-19 is here. Now that community transmission is on, it means more volume of people are going to be affected. How we manage that? People are playing politics with lives. And it behoves on the journalists to be able to unearth where you are now putting people to isolation centers. You are not giving them anything. You are not responsible to them. Other governments of the world are doing the same. When you say you are sick, they will tell you, how are you feeling? What is your feeling? Not everybody speaks from their homes. There's so many interventions we need to learn from. But I want to say a big well done to our panelists. I'm very proud of you. Funke, I'm going to speak with her later because we need to know how more we can work with the Guild of Editors. There's a new person now, but what were the thinkings, but that we can engage. Shola will also link up with you. What can we do more with journalists? We can unite with other members of the civil society, NGOs, to see how we can strengthen their capacity. Thank you also, the moderators.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Olaruyomi, you should train people. Mr. Olaruyomi, you are owing us training.
We train a whole lot of people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for honoring us.
Yes.
Thank you. Hello?
Majidi, can
I go ahead?
Yeah, just give us your final thoughts as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming forth within a very short.
Majid, are you there?
It's out.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I think I was disconnected. Yeah, beginning from the host, I think it was a great platform you provided this morning, but the platform will have been empty if we have not had the approval and the kind of honor done us by the great minds that we brought together. We must sincerely appreciate you. I think I'm in the middle of a mother and a father, and also an uncle. So the grandma to me there is the NLB, and we have who has been my father all along, and Funke Egbemode, who has been my mother all along. So I'm in the middle of the two. Particularly, I'm still looking at where do I belong on the idea of government intervention. So we must sincerely appreciate you. These are issues that we need to continue to interrogate. And for the participants who also joined us, we must sincerely appreciate you. Mr. Gbemika Ogunleye, also a Vice Chancellor of Lagos State.
Majid, are you there? Majid?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Also the Vice Chancellor of Lagos State University, Professor Fagbon was also here. And I think ahead of its own, on Monday, the university will also be having a kind of a session on similar subjects. So we sincerely appreciate everyone. Toby from US, almost the people who honored us within just under 2-3 days. I think this is huge. So how to take it further is something that we'll have to think of, but we must sincerely appreciate you. So on behalf of Journalists Against Poverty, on behalf of our coordinator, Wale Lucy, and Action Aid that has been a supporting partner, we sincerely appreciate you for coming on board without minding when we got across to you, and particularly Mr. Shola, who have not met one-on-one. We have only been discussing on phone, and we only came in contact about less than 2 months ago. So we must sincerely appreciate everyone who have come on board. Lola, thank you very much for making this happen. Charles, thank you very much for the great work you have done behind the scene. We must sincerely appreciate all the people who have contributed to the success of this program. Mr. Dakwalon Yomi, you woke up around 4:30 a.m. in your own place to join us. We must sincerely appreciate you. This is a huge sacrifice, but we are not surprised because this is your industry. You must be able. You have been contributing on how to salvage the industry all along. So you can't be tired at this time. You can't be tired. So thank you very much for the time you have created.
Don't forget
thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All the way from
thank you very much.
Has also joined us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Moji, for summarizing the wrap up. Yeah, so we also like to thank Mr. Dr. Adeboye and Rain Olawale of Department of Mathematics and Statistics, Federal Polytechnic, Ilaro. He sent in his question. And yeah, just to inform you that a communique has been developed from all what we talked about today, and it will be shared to you or through your registered email address. And also the live stream, the link to this video that we had just now, the conversation we had just now, will be shared also by email. To see appreciation from me to you, thank you so much for making today very productive. We wish you a very productive day ahead.
You're welcome.
So now we say bye-bye for now, but we'll keep the conversation going.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Yeah.
Well done.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.